presence of Ambassador Carlos Fernandez de Cossio from the Republic of Cuba. How are you this morning, Mr. Ambassador?
I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you so much to have us here, Embassy Direct, launching for our next edition of our magazine. And we have prepared a number of questions in relation to your duty here in South Africa. Your Excellency, how would you describe your diplomatic tour on South Africa? Is there any experience or event that stands out thus far?
I think it's for me, it's a very positive and encouraging posting to be in South Africa. It's a country that's very close to Cuba, with which we have a long history, so it's very encouraging. If I were to think of events that have occurred during my stay here, I could mention two, which are quite remarkable. One was the funerals for Madiba, for the late President Nelson Mandela, which was a tremendous show of solidarity among South Africans coming together to honor their historic leader, and also an immense recognition by the international community. On that occasion, our president, Raul Castro, came to South Africa, and he was among the leaders that spoke at the FNB Stadium on that occasion, and that is quite a remarkable experience for an ambassador. And another great experience was the visit to South Africa by the five Cuban heroes that were finally all released from prison in the United States, and they were welcomed in South Africa as if they were South Africa's own heroes. And that was a remarkable expression of our relationship and the bonds between our peoples.
Thanks. In relation to your family, what has been their experience in the country so far?
A very pleasant experience. I've had teenagers here who have gone to school in South Africa. My wife has enjoyed also the country. We've traveled fairly for a good part of the territory of South Africa. We've enjoyed it and we feel welcome in this country.
Yes. Your country has collaborated with South Africa by both bringing professionals from various fields to work here, teachers, medical doctors, and at the same time you have hosted South African in your universities to study medicine. Your Excellency, how would you define the current relationship between Cuba and South Africa?
It's a very good relationship, politically very close. And I would say that bilateral cooperation in the area that you're mentioning would be in many ways the defining element of our bilateral relationship. This year, we celebrate 20 years of official, formal bilateral cooperation between our governments, marking the 1996, which was the year in which the first Cuban professionals arrived in South Africa, medical doctors, to help the then young government of South Africa to cope with the needs of human resources, to be able to fulfill the commitments of delivering medical services to a population that didn't have them in the past. This cooperation today is it's in several areas. We have in human settlements, in housing, in water and sanitation. We even have military cooperation between our governments. And the medical one, which continues to be very important. Currently in South Africa, we have over 500 Cuban professionals working. And we have in Cuba close to 3,000 young South Africans studying in university, the majority of them in medical, to become doctors. And that is, we could say, an example of what the UN describes as South-South cooperation, when two countries complement each other's strengths in order to better the lives of their people, to better the lives of their nations.
And I'm sure the South African people and government really appreciate that cooperation. Cuba was a central force of support to the ANC during the struggle against apartheid. Being stationed here, how do you feel the country has moved forward after 1994?
I believe there's been change without doubt. I had the personal privilege of being a UN observer to the elections of 1994. And therefore I could take a glimpse of South Africa at that time. It was just a few days, it doesn't give you a general idea. But if one studies the history and the complex history of this country and the effort being made to try to put the country together with different cultural approaches, but to unite in one nation, one can see there has been advances. And one can see that there are still problems that need to be coped with. The country continues to suffer the inheritance of a deformation in terms of its social-economic structure. The problems of any developing countries in a world with an international economic order geared against or structured against developing countries and for the benefit of the former colonial powers. And it still has huge challenges ahead of it, but I believe it's a country that has advanced, and the fact of having professionals here that have worked for over 20 years, they are witnesses of the changes, of the advances in these past 22 years.
Yes, we share that opinion with you, Mr. Ambassador. The music of your country is often defined or referred as Afrocuban. What is the actual influence of the African culture within your country and vice versa?
Africa, or the inheritance from Africa, is part of the formation, and I would say the definition of the Cuban nationality. Most Cubans we have African blood in our system, in our being, as well as Spanish blood, basically. But more important than that, the way we think, the way we act, the way we feel, the way we eat, we dance, we dress, is influenced both by the European and the African influence. If one were to try to separate the African influence from the Cubans, one would lose the definition of a Cuban. You cannot separate one from the other. It's not a juxtaposition. It's a mixture of European and African inheritance. And music is perhaps the most visible. But you see all Cubans, regardless of the color or their appearance, what we eat, how we dress, how we walk, how we react, is influenced both by the European and the African influence, which is common to many parts of Latin America.
Yes, true, very true. And last but not least, earlier on, you mentioned the presence of President Castro during the funerals of President Mandela. That marked an important moment in history, which is exciting moments that we are living right now. After more than 50 years, your country is now in the process of restating diplomatic relations with the United States. How does this significant event affect the everyday life of any given Cuban?
Well, it's an important historical and political event. After more than 50 years, as you say, the government of the United States, or this government of the United States, finally decides to acknowledge the legitimacy of the Cuban Revolution, what it's meant, or what it has meant, and what it is. And that is, without doubt, an important political and, I would say, strategic achievement for Cuba and for our region, for Latin America and the Caribbean in general. The impact for the people of Cuba, one can see it more in terms of potential for the future and the opportunity that this gives in not having such a powerful country maintaining an official hostile policy towards our nation. But this change has not meant yet a change in the economic sanctions, what we call the economic blockade, which is the most comprehensive system of economic sanctions ever applied to any country. The current president of the United States, Barack Obama, has committed itself to change that. He has expressed his belief that these sanctions should be removed, but it's not all in his hands. It depends on an act of the Congress of the United States. And while that doesn't happen, these economic sanctions continue to have a very negative impact on the livelihoods of Cubans. It's a fundamental impediment to our development. So we hope, again, for the future, that this is an important step towards a relationship that will stop having this negative effect on the population of Cuba. Now, historically, there's no animosity between the people of Cuba and the people of the United States. So our people welcome this new opportunity. Our government welcomes this new opportunity. And again, we hope that with future governments in the United States, that we can continue in this path that will eventually lead to normalization. I say eventually because we cannot yet speak today of a normal relationship.
Yes, Mr. Ambassador, we want to wish the best of that in that process for your people, for your government, Also for the remaining of your presence in South Africa, that you and your family have a good stay. Thank you very much for having us this morning here, Embassy Direct, and I hope to see you soon.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.